It's not personal, it's strictly business. That famous line from The Godfather kept echoing through my head as I played Mafia The Old Country. Hangar 13 set out with a clean mission to take Mafia back to its roots in a tight story-driven experience after the broader open-world experiment of Mafia III. The result is a game that often feels like playing through a classic mob movie under the Sicilian sun. The big question: does this more strictly business approach, linear narrative, no filler, work under the scrutiny of modern expectations? After finishing Enzo Favara's journey and spending hours roaming 1900 Sicily, I can say that The Old Country delivers one of the most atmospheric and focused Mafia tales yet, though not without leaving a bit of potential on the table. This is my review after 100% completing Mafia The Old Country, and as a Mafia series fan and sucker for open world crime games. Now, let's get nerdy. For context, I adored the original Mafia for its narrative and period atmosphere, and appreciated Mafia II despite its limited interactivity. Mafia III had great storytelling but a repetitive open world structure that stretched too thin. The Old Country positions itself as an answer to that. It's a prequel set in Sicily circa 1900, acting almost as an origin story for the Mafia series itself. You play as Enzo Favara, a young Sicilian man who escaped a childhood of indentured labor in sulfur mines to join the Torrisi crime family. The premise immediately sets a different tone. This isn't the Prohibition-era American Mafia we're used to, but the Old Country Casa Nostra. The developers have hammered home that this game is meant to feel like Mafia 1 and 2, linear, character-driven, and cinematic. Knowing this going in is important. If you come expecting a huge sandbox with endless side quests, you'll need to adjust those expectations. Think of this more like an interactive TV miniseries about the rise of a mafioso in Sicily, a series of dramatic episodes that you experience in order. From the jump, it's clear Hangar 13 cares about authenticity. The game is steeped in historical detail. Cobbled streets where villagers carry produce, men in flat caps gossiping in Sicilian, and an atmosphere that oozes the Godfather Part 2 vibes. Enzo's story is entirely standalone. You don't need to have played any prior Mafia to get it, though fans will catch some loving nods. It's also worth noting that this game benefited from a relatively drama-free development, a stark contrast to the behind-the-scenes turmoil that affected Mafia III. That translates into a confident design direction here. This is Hangar 13 saying, we're going to tell you a tight mob story and not to worry about adding fluff. It's a gamble in the 2025's market of giant open worlds, but one that for most part paid off. Sicily 1900s, a character unto itself. The setting is hands down my favorite aspect of The Old Country. We've seen open world games tackle New York, Chicago, LA, but early 20th century rural Sicily? That's new, and it's gorgeous. The game's world is massive, but it's densely packed with atmosphere. There's the town of San Celeste, a fictional port town inspired by real Sicilian locales, complete with a piazza, Baroque church, and narrow streets where vendors shout in Italian dialect. Step outside town and you're in the Villa Dorata, the Golden Valley, a countryside with rolling wheat fields, vineyards, and ancient ruins. It's all delivered with Unreal Engine 5's visual heft. Expect stunning lighting as the Mediterranean sun filters through olive groves and sudden downpours turn roads to mud. The world design reminds me of Mafia II's approach. It's not about sheer size, but rather about feeling like a real place. There are fewer pedestrians and vehicles than in, say, GTA, but the ones presented are purposeful. A farmer leads his mule cart, two men argue on a corner about an upcoming election, and so forth. These little touches breathe life into what is ultimately a backdrop for the story. One might ask, since the game is linear, how much do you actually use the world? Well, during the story missions, quite a bit. The missions naturally guide you through many of the map's regions. One early chapter has you traveling from a coastal fishing village up to a mountainous monastery used as a smuggler's hideout. Another mission takes place in a busy market street in San Celeste. Between missions, the game occasionally lets you roam or drive to the next objective at your own pace. And the post-story, there's a free ride mode for pure exploration. So while you're not checking off outpost liberated icons, you are experiencing the world organically through the plot. I personally love taking a moment after a mission to just trot my horse through the countryside at sunset. No urgent shootouts, just soaking in the ambience. It's a statement to how well they've nailed the vibe that this was enjoyable in and of itself. That said, the world's limited interactivity might disappoint some. Apart from finding collectibles or shops, there aren't random activities. You can't, for example, start a random street brawl or play mini-games like cards, no carnival games or such here. Civilian AI is fairly basic. They react with fear if you draw a gun, and occasionally you'll hear "Buongiorno" as you pass, but that is purely window dressing. Police presence in the world is minimal except for in towns. In short, Sicily is a stage set for the narrative. A beautiful stage, one I will remember, but don't expect the emergent chaos of an Assassin's Creed or GTA. Personally, I found this refreshing. It's nice to have a game world that isn't begging for my attention with side quests every 10 feet, allowing me to stay in the world's story mindset. But if you require constant open world distractions, you might find the Valley of Sicily a bit empty. The narrative is where the old country shines brightest. Enzo's tale is a classic rise and fall mob story with a twist. It's happening in a society where the mafia is just coalescing. There's an almost Wild West quality to 1900 Sicily depicted here. Bandits feuding families and local dons who are more like feudal lords. Enzo starts as a nobody, an orphan teenager working in hellish conditions, and the opening chapter doesn't pull punches, showing that brutality. This makes his introduction into Don Torossi's family compelling. You genuinely feel Enzo's hunger for freedom and respect. Unlike Mafia's protagonists Tommy Angelo and Vito Scalata, who were war veterans or petty criminals, Enzo's motivation is survival and carving out a life he controls. This gives the story a strong emotional core. The cast of characters around Enzo is memorable. Don Augusto Torrisi is the patriarch you serve. He's no caricature, coming across equal parts benevolent ruler and ruthless strategist. His daughter, Lucia, quickly became one of my favorite characters. She's essentially the counselor of the family, educated and sharp-tongued, and she and Enzo develop a nuanced relationship. There's also Enzo's best friend, Salvatore, a fellow soldato whose light-hearted banter provides needed levity amid the violence. And of course, every mafia story needs a snake. And here, it's Vincenzo il Trattatore, a rival underboss whose arc you can probably guess from his nickname. While some characters lean on gentle archetypes, the hot-headed capo, the world-weary consigliere, the writing and performances elevate them. I played mostly in English audio, where the voice acting is top-notch, the actors often slip in Italian Sicilian phrases, and it never feels hokey. Lines land with weight. A scene where Don Torosi explains the meaning of omerta, the code of silence, to Enzo gave me chills. Importantly, the game doesn't shy away from showing the cost of the mafia life. It's not all glamour. Enzo goes from doing low-level dirty work, intimidating farmers behind on payments, to getting involved in full-blown vendetta between the Torossi and rival family. As the missions progress, the stakes escalate and personal tragedies mount. By the final chapter, there were a couple of genuinely gut-punching moments, including one of the boldest, most sombering endings in any Mafia game to date. I won't spoil it, but let's say the theme, family takes sacrifice, the game marketing tagline, is not just lip service. Does the narrative hit any bumps? Perhaps a few. It's a straightforward linear story, and you might see certain betrayals or twists coming a mile away. One critique I have is the middle act introduces a love interest subplot for Enzo that feels a bit underdeveloped, kind of typical the Don's daughter situation. It wasn't bad, just predictable. Also, because the game is relatively short, you're looking at about a 12-hour run through of the main story, a couple of side characters don't get as much screen time as they would like to have. For instance, a police inspector character who is poised as an antagonist only shows up in 2 scenes. He's more there to be represented, the law in closing, than to be fully fleshed out character. But overall, as a narrative package, I found The Old Country gripping. It's paced briskly, almost every chapter ends on a dramatic note, pushing to see what's next. There are quieter moments too, early on, with Enzo attending a family dinner at Don Tarossi's estate, and you actually sit and hear the stories of the world. Think about The Godfather's famous wedding intro. These moments make you care about the family, which in turn gives weight to the inevitable bloodshed to come. I'd compare the storytelling favorably to Mafia II. It's not quite as groundbreaking as Mafia I was in 2002, but it does it with confidence. It's done with excellent voice acting, and plenty of Sicilian flavor sets it apart. If you've come to Mafia primarily for a good story, I suspect you'll walk away satisfied, possibly even pleasantly surprised by some of the risks it has taken in its final act. Okay then, so the story is great, but how does it play? In short, Mafia TOC plays it rather safe on mechanics. This is a third-person cover-based shooter at heart, with stealth elements and driving sections interspersed. If you've played Mafia III or Mafia DE, the remake, you'll feel right at home. Enzo moves with deliberate weight, there's a dedicated cover system, and gunplay that's slow-paced but satisfying. I enjoyed the gunfights, but keep in mind they are more stop and pop than run and gun. Enzo isn't a superhuman. A few shots will put you down on normal difficulty, and weapons have realistic reload times. I found myself relying on my revolver and shotgun a lot. The shotgun in particular at close range is a beast. The shooting has some kick, firing the bolt-action rifle gives a nice jolt and a crack that echoes. And landing a headshot with the old Mauser pistol and seeing an enemy crumple before you never gets old. There's a slight aim assist even on mouse, which I actually turned down to make it more satisfying. AI enemies typically take cover and pop out to shoot. They're not tactical geniuses, but occasionally one will try and flank you or try and rush you when low on ammo. I had a memorable fight in Chapter 11 where enemies came from multiple sides in a burning winery. I had to bounce between cover spots as they encircle me, which got pretty intense. The game's combat scenarios are tailored, not procedural, so each fight tends to have some unique element. Snipers on a balcony in one, a heavy gunner enemy with a prototype machine gun in another. It keeps things from feeling too repetitive given the relatively limited arsenal. Many missions start you in stealth or give you the option. The stealth takedowns with a knife are brutal in a good way. Enzo will cover an enemy's mouth and stab them in the heart from behind or slice their throat. The animation variety and sound design, a sickening schlick of the blade through flesh, truly sells this. Stealth is fairly forgiving and you can mark enemies with your Mafia intuition vision if you choose. If you do get spotted, you usually can recover by breaking line of sight and hiding, unless the mission script dictates otherwise. I like that the game often let me clear an entire area silently. The level design supports multiple paths like crouching through a vineyard field or climbing a terrace to a balcony to avoid detection. The enemy cones of visions aren't too long, think Mafia III stealth, which was on the easier side. To me, that's fine because it encourages actually using stealth rather than being discouraged by constant fails. Should you prefer going loud, the game doesn't punish you severely. It really does accommodate different playstyles. In one mission I tried pure stealth and succeeded. In the next I tripped an alarm intentionally and had a pitched gun battle. Both were fun and felt valid. An interesting addition is the knife durability and types. You can only carry one knife at a time, but you'll find better ones as you progress. Some knives let you throw them, great for silent ranged kills, but you have to retrieve the knife, while others have perks. For example, I got the San Cipriano, a knife that healed me a bit for each stealth takedown. Awesome for maintaining health when knifing through a camp. Durability only comes into play if you're abusing certain moves, like chain stealth kills or prying open many lock crates. And you can restore durability with found whetstones. Honestly, during the story I never actually broke a knife. It was mostly a reminder that maybe I shouldn't try to Rambo fight 3 guys head on. There's a separate melee system for direct fights. And few one-on-one melee boss fights were simple pattern recognition. Wait for swing, dodge, counter, not too challenging, but they added nice variety to the pacing. In terms of driving, you'll split travel between horses and cars. The horses control nicely, I dare to say a bit too nicely, as they can turn on a dime at full gallop, perhaps some creative license there. Riding through the countryside was a joy, and the game even has a button to cinematically follow the road while on horseback, obviously used to just admire the scenery. Cars are slow and clunky, but deliberately so. If you found Mafia I's old cars annoying, you might have mixed feelings here. There's an early mission that's a car chase in 1905 cars, which is both tense and comical as you're furiously trying to get a 20 HP jalopy to catch up to another. I failed that mission once because I took a corner too fast, spun out, and the target got away. The second time I realized, okay, feather the brake, don't oversteer. Basically, I had to drive like someone in 1905 would. It was oddly immersive to struggle with the machine, and the aforementioned skip drive toggle. If a mission expects you to, say, drive 5 minutes across the map just for a cutscene, it will often give you the option to skip that transit after you've experienced it once. As someone who sometimes gets impatient with drive here, then there, then back mission design, I appreciated this. Oh, by the way, vehicles do take damage fairly realistically. Crash into a stone wall and your engine might die. On hard driving mode, you can even blow your engine if you're constantly redlining it, though that is quite hard to do given the cars. I found the police would ticket me for running someone over or causing a ruckus, but there's no speed limit mechanic like Mafia II's dedicated speed limiter. You just have to use common sense, which given the speeds involved is quite hard. Overall, driving segments are relatively few and used as palate cleansers between action scenes, which is the right call. You're not doing pizza delivery or racing tournaments on the side, except the one-story race, and when you do drive, the authentic handling keeps you on your toes. I wouldn't call it fun in the traditional sense to drive these bricks on wheels, but it is engaging and certainly nails period authenticity. On the gameplay front, The Old Country strips out a lot of fluff and returns to basics. There's no character leveling or perks trees. Enzo's core abilities, shoot, drive, stealth, are what they are from the start till the end. Instead, progression comes through equipment. As you advance the story, you unlock better guns for purchase. For example, about a third in, the local blacksmith shop starts selling a pump-action shotgun, which I instantly grabbed to replace my Lupara. These upgrades feel meaningful. The pump-action shotgun holds more shells and hits a bit further, making combat easier. Similarly, later you can get a repeater rifle, an early semi-automatic rifle, that changes how you approach long-range fights. That said, the arsenal remains period appropriate and relatively limited, maybe 12 firearms in total, not counting DLC variants. So, progression isn't about amassing an armory of 50 guns, it's more about gradually moving from rudimentary weaponry to slightly less rudimentary ones. Money, denarii, is the gate for these, but I found the game generous. By mid-game, I could afford every new weapon as it became available, as long as I looted bodies and opened up the occasional safe. Lockpicking minigame here is a familiar rotation spin design, nothing special. Speaking of lockpicking, this is a minor mechanic. It's used for optional loot boxes and some mission doors. And it's not hard, especially if you've played Mafia Definitive Edition or Fallout 4's lockpicking games. Same idea. Outside of combat, you can also buy outfits for Enzo. This is purely cosmetic, but I love this feature. You start in ragged miner clothes, but as you rise in the family, you get that sharp Mafia style. 3-piece suits, bandit style long coat, even a priest outfit for a disguised mission. By endgame, my Enzo wore a white double-breasted suit with a red carnation, looking like a proper Don. Outfits are unlocked via story and side exploration. Find a tailor shop in town or complete a certain side delivery and new threads appear in those shops. It's a small thing, but it added to the sense of Enzo's progression and status. The charm perk system is a new addition, albeit a light one. Charms attached to your rosary, very thematic, and give bonuses like carry 5% more ammo or health regen starts 1 second sooner. They do help. I had one that reduced police detection range, useful for sneaking around town, but you can absolutely ignore them if you want a vanilla experience. I suspect most players will end up equipping whatever best charm they have and forgetting about it. It's not a deep RPG element, just a little bonus. What's absent, and I didn't miss at all, is that there's no crafting. Thank the heavens, I do not want to be gathering herbs in a Mafia game. No skill upgrades to grind, no meaningless collectibles. Well, the collectibles that are here provided story context or real reward, like charms or big cash boosts, so I was actually motivated to seek them out. In essence, the game respects your time, something I really appreciate as a completionist who sometimes dreads an Ubisoft-style map with 500 icons. I finished the main game story in about 12 hours. Then spend another 5 to 6 exploring to get 100% collectibles and the rest of the achievements. It felt doable and fun, not like a second job. One of my curiosities going into this was how they would handle the law enforcement in the early 1900s setup. The answer, pretty light. The police exist mostly in town areas, but for most of the story, you're dealing with rival mobsters or bandits, so the cops show up occasionally. When free roaming San Celeste, you do see a few officers patrolling. The wanted system is simple: commit a crime in front of a cop or civilian who runs to fetch one, and you'll get a wanted level indicated by an icon. Low level means a couple of cops will attempt to arrest you. They shout, "Halt!" and if you holster your weapon and stand, they'll actually cuff you, leading to the game over screen. If you resist or kill an officer, your notoriety goes up. More will spawn, and you'll basically become another enemy faction to evade. Lose them by breaking line of sight and hiding or leaving town. Because transportation isn't super fast, the easiest way to ditch heat is by ducking into an alley or climbing onto a rooftop until the timer expires. Bribery is not an option here. You can't bribe on the spot, nor is there a mechanic to pay off your wanted level after the fact. However, your notoriety also doesn't carry over between missions or free roam sections. Each chapter is self-contained. If a mission involves the police, and a couple do, like the thrilling sequence where the police raid a smuggler's meet and you're caught midway through, then escaping them is a mission objective. But once you're done, it's back to business as usual. One cool detail is, since it's a small community, if you do a lot of crime out of mission, you'll start seeing wanted posters for Enzo around town. This is actually a collectible too. It doesn't change gameplay dramatically, but it's a neat immersive touch. Truthfully, for the most of my playthrough, I barely encountered the police. I obey traffic laws loosely, but given the slow vehicles, that was never a problem, and I never accidentally plowed into a crowd like I might in other games. The design seems balanced, so if you want to go on a rampage, you probably could, but it's kind of out of character for the experience the game is going for. In context, it makes sense. You're trying to prove yourself to the Don, not cause random chaos. So in terms of gameplay, the notoriety system takes a back seat. Unlike Mafia II, where its speeding tickets and such were a constant consideration, here it's toned down. I think that's fine. The drama is meant to come from the mafia conflicts, not from causing havoc and cop chases. However, if I compare it to something like Red Dead Redemption 2, another historically open world lore system, the Old Country system is rudimentary. There's no depth like witness identification or bounty hunters chasing you later. It's immediate cause and effect. I did kind of wish for one mission where you had to bribe an official or manipulate the law as part of the story. The mafia colluded with the police chief perhaps, but the story focus is really insular to the crime families. So the bottom line, police exist. You can largely ignore them or occasionally toy with them for amusement in free roam. I did one test where I punched an officer and ran around on horseback to see how many would show up. I got like 5 chasing me through town before hiding in a barn. But they are not a major gameplay pillar here. The mission design in the Old Country is refreshingly old school in some ways. We're talking mostly bespoke missions, each with a unique scenario or set piece. No copy-pasted, go here, clear this, filler. One mission, you're infiltrating a villa during a wedding. Yes, the classic mafia wedding massacre scenario. And yes, it's as fun as it sounds, crashing a rival party's wedding in disguise. Next, you might be sneaking into an underground crypt to retrieve a stolen relic. This one had almost survival horror vibes, as I crept with just a lantern amidst the tombs. There's a standout mission around chapter 7 where Enzo ends up on a train. It starts as a foot chase, then becomes a moving train shootout, and finally a showdown atop a train car. It's a linear spectacle done right. This section only lasts about 15 minutes or so, but it's exhilarating and doesn't outstay its welcome. Checkpoints within missions are generally fair. If you die, you usually restart at the beginning of the current gunfight or before a cutscene. Some missions have mid-mission cutscenes and also act as checkpoints. I rarely lost more than a few minutes of progress on a failure. Also, the game doesn't have any timed mission annoyances, except where thematically appropriate, like the race mission obviously, or parts where you have to rescue someone from a burning building before it collapses, which had a generous timer. One thing to note, because the game is linear, there is no mission replay menu until you beat the game. After finishing, you unlock Chapter Select in the main menu. This is fantastic for completionists. You can replay any chapter and it even tells you which collectibles you've got in each. During a first playthrough though, if you miss an objective, say there's an optional don't get spotted challenge in that mission, you can't redo it immediately. There's no in-mission quick restart for challenges. That might bug some who want to ace everything in one go. For me, I just played naturally and then after the story went back via chapter replay to clean up trophies. That system works well and doesn't require a full new game unless you want to experience it all again on hard. As mentioned earlier, there aren't traditional side quests with narrative arcs. The closest are some optional encounters in free roam. I stumbled on a couple of mini events like helping a farmer whose cart had broken, basically fetch a replacement wheel from nearby. In return, he gave me info about a hiding spot with money. These are unmarked and rare. Pleasant surprises more than a structured side mission list. The primary side content is collectibles and exploration. The game encourages you to sniff around. For example, early on, you might find a lockbox with a safe combination note, which is part of a sequence to open safes across multiple chapters. This ties into the achievement Salvatore's Apprentice for cracking all the safes, named after your safe cracker buddy Salvatore. There are also some fun Easter eggs for series fans. I found an old-timey newspaper referencing a Sicilian immigrant named Scarletta, leaving for America, a wink to Mafia II's Vito Scaletta. Not essential info, but it certainly put a smile on my face. The lack of big side missions might disappoint those who love having lots to do, but I actually think it was the right call here. The story pacing remains tight because of it. Mafia 3 tried to give us tons of side content and it became repetitive. The Old Country opts for almost none and avoids that trap, albeit at risk of feeling a bit sparse once the story is over. After the credits rolled, I spent a couple of hours mopping up collectibles and then I was basically done. That's unusual nowadays, finishing a game 100% in under 20 hours, but frankly it was kind of nice. It didn't overstay its welcome. Could there have been a happy medium with a few more optional missions? Sure. For instance, I would have enjoyed maybe having some side jobs for the family, like extra hits or running gambling rackets, that weren't needed for the main story but could flesh out the world. The game doesn't have those, likely due to no padding directive. The developers did hint if players want more side activities, they might expand free roam in an update, so fingers crossed for that if you crave more. Playing on PC, I was prepared for the worst, giving the Unreal Engine 5's reputation, but I came away impressed. The game was mostly smooth. Only in San Celeste town centers did I see dips below 50 frames per second, likely due to all of the AI and draw distance of that town. A quick turn on DLS performance bumped that back above 60. So yes, PC players, you'll want to leverage the upscalers, which thankfully look good in this game. Probably thank the TSR under the hood. I also tested the game on a friend's PS5, quality versus performance. Performance mode aiming for 60 FPS is absolutely the way to go. The frame rate held 60 in most combat scenes, with only occasional drops in heavier weather. The resolution drop in performance mode wasn't noticeable unless I compared it side to side, and it still looked crisp enough thanks to the temporal upscaling. And quality mode at 30 FPS felt a bit sluggish after testing 60, though the increased resolution and some better foliage density were pretty. If you have a PS5 Pro, which I don't, apparently that can do 60 at a higher resolution or even 120 FPS mode per patch notes, which sounds fantastic for those with 120Hz TVs. I encountered exactly one crash on my PC during my entire playthrough. It crashed to desktop when loading back to free roam after a chapter with no progress lost. Others have reported rare crashes on an infinite loading bug in a specific chapter, but those seem fairly uncommon. Overall, it's a much cleaner launch than Mafia 3's was, reflecting that extra polish time. The game auto-saves frequently and keeps only one save slot plus a backup. Console versions, I've heard, run similarly well. The Series X is on par with PS5, Series S targets 60 at lower res, some say 900 to 1080p upscaled, but still hits 60. I do note a few visual glitches. One time during a cutscene, an NPC's hat popped off his head and hovered in the air. Comical but fleeting. Driving fast through towns, I once saw a pedestrian literally T-pose for a split second as they spawned. These are typical open world jank bits, nothing catastrophic. Loading times, as mentioned, are nearly instant on SSD. When you die, boom, you're back in the action in 5 seconds. Fast travel isn't a thing. World isn't huge enough to need it. But if you do need to traverse, at worst it's a couple of minutes by horse, which is fine. One thing PC players should do, update to the latest GPU drivers. Early on, Nvidia users on old drivers reported a widescreen edge flickering issue, which I experienced until updating my drivers, and that disappeared. Also, if you use HDR, calibrate carefully. The default might blow out highlights. I had to dial back my HDR exposure in settings to get the right look. Now, speaking from the perspective of a completionist, Mafia The Old Country is a breath of fresh air in terms of not being a grindfest. To 100% the game, platinum trophy or all achievements, took me about 18 hours total, and it was an enjoyable 18 with very little frustration. Here's the breakdown. The main story on hard for me took 12 hours. Took it slow, did some exploration. Beating it on hard unlocks the true Soldato achievement. If you start on a lower difficulty, you can use chapter replay to redo missions on hard later to get that trophy, but it's easier to do this from the start. Fortunately, hard isn't that bad. It requires more cautious play, but you get health regens and plenty of resources even on hard, so it's manageable for anyone with shooter experience. I'd rate it maybe a 4 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. Looking at missable trophies, the devs were kind here. Technically nothing is permanently missable because of the chapter select and free roam after the story. And as far as I'm aware, Salvatore's Apprentice, cracking all safes, is the only potential buggy achievement or trophy, but can still be gotten after chapter select via replay. I can attest that after finishing the game, I was able to hop into specific chapters to grab collectibles or do specific trophy requirements with no issue. The game saves collectible progress globally. The moment you pick it up, it's flagged as found even if you quit the chapter. That's very player friendly. With regards to collectibles, there are 50 hidden foxes, 23 photos, 20 Saints cards, and 50 newspapers. Those are the main sets, plus a bunch of notes/letters that are actually not needed for trophies. The notes are just lore. Collectibles mostly appear on the minimap when you're near them. On free roam, you'll see a tiny icon if close, and after beating the story, the free roam actually marks which chapter had the ones you've missed. Super helpful. So finding them wasn't a chore. It was kind of a nice excuse to ride around the map one last time. The hidden foxes are truly hidden. No icon until you're almost on top of them. So pay special attention when hunting for those sneaky critters. The Old Country also features a number of challenges or optional objectives. The game has a few chapters specific challenges tied to trophies, like win the race with the time, don't trigger any alarms in a mission, make 20 stealth kills, etc. Most of these I either naturally did or could easily retry via chapter select. For example, there's a trophy for finishing the chapter 7 train section under a certain time. I missed it by a minute the first time around. There's also no multiplayer or extra mode, so nothing like grind 100 multiplayer match nonsense. All in all, if you're a completionist who dreaded Mafia 3's hundreds of collectibles and tedious tasks, fear not. The Old Country respects your time. The 100% completion, platinum trophy or 1000 game score is quite attainable here. More importantly, it's quite fun because you get to experience all of the set pieces again via chapter replay. I was actually a bit sad when I finished cleaning up. I kind of wanted more chapters or some new game plus just to continue in that world with a superpowered Enzo. Alas, no new game plus, but you can keep playing after finishing to roam or do whatever. One slight downer, after doing everything, there isn't a huge reward like an alternate ending or a bonus mode. Mafia 1 had Free Ride Extreme for instance. The Old Country hints at expanding free roam via an update, which might add something for us diehard fans to come back to. At launch though, once you've done it all, it's done. I got the platinum, and aside from maybe replaying on Sicilian VO for fun, there isn't an endgame or post-game content to grind. No endless side missions or challenges beyond achievement. Depending on your viewpoint, that's either a bummer or a relief. For me, it's fine. I moved on, satisfied, not burnt out. Mafia The Old Country feels like a love letter to what made the Mafia series special. Story setting and style. It trades the wide scope and experimentation of Mafia 3 for a back-to-basics focus, and in doing so delivers something that, while not revolutionary, is quite special. It's the kind of game that might not top the 90 plus on Metacritic, but for the right players it's going to hit the spot in a way that those bloated open worlds will never. Who is that right player? If you're someone who values narrative and atmosphere over endless content, this is an easy recommendation. It's a game you sink into for a week or two, like binge watching a great Mafia series, and then you're done, satisfied, not exhausted. The story's highs are highs, and it respects the series' lineage while carving out its own identity by exploring the Sicilian roots that the mob came from. And I would especially recommend at least playing part of the game with Sicilian voice acting turned on. It adds so much flavor. If you're an open world junkie who lives for side activities and hundreds of hours of gameplay, then The Old Country might feel too constrained or small for you. There's definitely a chance that you'll find it short or lament that after the story there isn't much around for you to do. It's true, the game's not aiming to be a platform for emergent gameplay the way that something like a GTA Online does. It's linear entertainment, and for me, that was welcome. It doesn't waste your time, but it's subjective preference. From a gameplay standpoint, the shooting and stealth are solid but not extraordinary. They get the job done in a serviceable way. If you require cutting-edge mechanics or innovative gameplay loops, you won't find that here. What you will find is carefully crafted missions, with a nice variety of scenarios and a few memorable set pieces. And honestly, I'll take that any day over a game that has 500 checklist items with no soul. The technical polish impressed me at launch, a rarity these days, which makes it easier to recommend immediately rather than wait for 3 patches. On PC it runs well, assuming you meet requirements and leverage upscaling, and on console it's smooth. No show-stopping bugs encountered in my run. For series fans, The Old Country is a must-play. It enriches the Mafia universe, gives you the nostalgic feeling of Mafia 1 and 2, and arguably has some of the best writing in the franchise. And it's also fun to catch references linking these games together. It's clear Hangar 13 learned from past missteps and poured a lot of heart into this one, which I appreciate as someone who's followed Mafia for 2 decades. For newcomers, you can absolutely start here and have a self-contained, satisfying Mafia story. In fact, chronologically, this is the earliest tale, so it's an interesting entry point. Just don't expect a sandbox. Know that you're signing up for a narrative adventure first and foremost. If you enjoy story-rich games like Uncharted, minus the puzzles, or LA Noire, you'll likely vibe with this one. In conclusion, Mafia The Old Country is a throwback in the best way possible. Rich in storytelling, dripping with atmosphere, and content that lets you live in a specific time and place without overwhelming you. It may not be the flashiest or most groundbreaking game in 2025, but it left a strong impression on me. As the end credits rolled, accompanied by the haunting Sicilian ballad no less, I felt like I had experienced an interactive crime epic, one that knew when to roll the credits and not to drag on. And in the era of endless live services and open world fluff, that's an offer I am glad I didn't refuse. For fans of Mafia's narrative legacy or anyone craving a focused story-driven action adventure, The Old Country is an offer worth taking. Come for the mob drama and Sicilian ambiance, stay for the tight mission design and heartfelt character arcs. If you need a massive sandbox or ultra deep mechanics, you might feel a bit antsy in this quiety countryside. But if you can appreciate well-timed story above all, The Old Country delivers the goods like a trusted soldato. It's a salute to the Mafia franchise past, and despite playing it safe, it earns its place in the Familia.